possible that I come to you and just say, hey, would you consider facilitating? And that group would probably need to be in this general area based on the numbers and things like that. When we talked, we didn't talk about, hey, you have to be in a group in your neighborhood. We actually talked, and this is one of the things that Andy challenged me on. If you were in that meeting, I told you I presented this to Andy that day. And Andy just said, hey, relationships should be the first thing that connect people. And that makes total sense. So we want you to know, like, hey, with the facilitators, or you may have a friend in the church who's already committed to a group, it's fine for you to go based on relationship. Sometimes you're going to go based on where it's meeting, and at other times you're going to go based on when it meets. And so all of those filters are kind of filters that you could put through those groups to think through what works for you. But I'm encouraged by where we are right now with 50 adults and 20 kids. Emily Mesmer emailed me yesterday and said, hey, it would be good if you clarified this. So I just wanted to try to be as clear as possible. Discipleship groups are not a separate structure. They're not going to be populated in a different way. Discipleship groups are like chocolate chips within the community groups. So discipleship groups are going to be populated through people who are in the community group. Another thing that Emily said was, what if someone can't meet when the community group meets, but they want to be a part of a discipleship group? So let's just say your work rotation or your class rotation or your recreational volleyball rotation, whatever it is, already has a fixed meeting on those alternating weeks that you're like, I like to eat, but I can't show up for the family meal. We just want to ask you to register for one of those groups so that we can process you through into a discipleship group with future facilitators and things like that. That's just the easiest way. But if you find yourself thinking this just doesn't work, click the last button that says this just doesn't work, but I want it to work, and we will talk. Like, we'll figure things out, okay? So we don't want to just exclude. We want to work it out as easy as possible. So any questions about that before we go into new business? Any questions? Ji-san, can you put that up with that short link on it, the community groups, just in case you guys have not signed up yet? You can go to the shortened link and do that then, or via that link. And so, any other questions? Remember, the community groups ideally will be anybody. And so your neighbors, your coworkers, if Elizabeth is still here on September 12th, we would want her and her family, anybody to be able to come in. So community groups are like the Sunday morning service. Anybody can come into it. Discipleship groups are going to be a little bit different. The boundaries around that is not going to be as open. But that's kind of how it's always been. And so, Joey? Yep. So Ji-Song, I think, asked this question, like, if you're going to facilitate a D group, and on the off weeks you still wanted to meet up with your people, I think that's fine, as long as the people are okay with that, and as long as someone's not excluded simply because they're not able. So we don't want to, just make it, my D group's 6 people and only 4 of us are hanging out. As long as it's always that open invitation. Like, if you can come, come. If you can be with us, be with us. We'll all be studying the Gospel of Mark this semester, and so that reading schedule, that study schedule will be laid out for every D group. That will be given to you from myself and Ji-Song. We'll be working through that, laying that out. Some of the stuff that we heard over and over was these groups weren't clear. We didn't know what we were doing. We would like to be doing the same thing together so that we can kind of share that within the body. And so like we've done in the past, we'll do the same study in the fall. Facilitators will be able to choose a Bible book in the spring. And then in the summer, it will be more of an elective style thing, where if you want to study a book together, not a book of the Bible, but a book, or a doctrine, or a theme, or a topic, that's where really big churches would just call that the free market system, where it's just kind of like, just pick whatever you want. So, any other questions? Sweet. We're going to walk through the budget. You have the one that JR emailed to you guys printed off or on your phone, and Luke is going to walk us through that.
Thank you. AR, Brad, and I were the individuals to work on the budget. And did you work on the budget? Do you want to work on the budget? It's not finalized yet. Do you want more goldfish? All right, little buddy. So in all of this, we do have, as a congregation, we're making this choice together, and because of increased cost, inflation, there's some things that we needed to be tactful about. But what is really amazing, less covenant members, and you can see that we are almost exactly the same of internal giving. It's just an amazing thing that the Lord has done. I was a proxy of an organization called Beachmont Christian Camp in Kingsville, Maryland. And that ministry had my dad on the board and a bunch of other men. Every year they were in the red. And every year they just said, Lord, provide. Every year they came out ahead. And I just think the Lord is going to work and provide for the ministries that he finds important. So I'm humbled in that and encouraged in it. Let's see if I have everything here. All right, so let's walk through some of the details here. Let's see. Does this work? Oh, yeah. Fantastic. All right, so internal giving, that one makes most sense for us because that is what we've emailed you and you've been able to pledge back. There's about 8 individuals potentially that are still not communicated back, but it's such an amazing thing to see. This is where we're at. And we always want to say, if you're in a season that you're not able to commit, completely fine. And just communicating us, because as a budget method, we need to do our best as possible, and we have. So one area that did bump up is that external. So we've always had about $25,000 come in from non-members. We took it to 32 this year, and that is because we looked at the average 3-year trend. It's actually $33,800, but for 2022, we're at $39,500. So it shows that there is this external giving allowed to us. We're trying to go in the very conservative sense because that is something that we never want to commit to, but that's where we're at on that one. And then partner churches, we had grants previously. That is not on there, but that is on your sheet. And then reallocation of funds. So feel free to ask questions around this one. When the pandemic started, as a church, we said, let's take an offering. And the individuals that said, I want to contribute to this, have given that money. We received $13,578. And what was allocated to members was $3,524. So that is what was expressed needs, and then we responded to that, and those funds were dispensed. So now we have $10,042 left. What we have done on the team is emailed the individuals that gave that money and asked for it to be reallocated essentially into the general fund, which is ultimately to fulfill the new salary roles of an assistant pastor and administrator. So that's where those funds were going from. So any questions, clarification on how we're reusing those funds? Essentially, it's in our general bucket now, and we just need to always move it from another bucket. So it's earmarked only for this benevolence COVID fund, but now we're looking to move that. I don't know if everyone has submitted back or not, but that is something that we requested whoever did give that initially. So that is where we come up with $206,573 that we are responsible for. And those are those points I just walked through. Reallocation of those, increase of those external numbers there. So now we get into the line item of personal expenses. So this is going to be everything that is salary for our church. So we have Brad, we have janitor, we are now including the 2 new roles, which is assistant pastor and then church administrator. One of the things that is taken away from this, let's see if it breaks up one here, is that we're removing the stipend for worship leader. So that worship leader was $50 per Sunday, and that has been communicated essentially to Bronwyn on this, that for the administrator role, we are taking that and moving it into that, and then the worship leader role becomes voluntary for what our church is able to support right now. We, as a church, talked about a 10% increase to Brad's salary. This budget shows 10% increase to him for the last several years that we weren't able to do anything different. And then the janitorial role of where that was in, we just wanted to do the best we can to say how much time does it really take. So we've kind of done an assessment of how many hours. So we've reduced that from 7.5 hours to 6 hours, and it saves us a couple $1,000. But we believe that is the real amount of time that we've seen people actually perform this. So that is where we get to our total amount of the $128,000 of everybody on staff, as well as Macklin as the children's minister. So she gets paid on that as well. Any clarifications on those? Because I know that was Brad's budget, essentially our senior pastor budget being able to be increased and doing that for him. That is in here and giving us this little bit of surplus. So we're not looking for any other funds any other places. And JR is not here, but we'll take all notes and then we'll all discuss and get back to you as timely as possible. All right, we will move to operations. So operations gets broken into these different buckets. And there's a couple points here that I wanted to, almost a call to action on how we can look at these. So we subscribe to a service called Blue Fire, and their funds, when we look at them year over year and how much they've just increased, that one really shot up quite a bit. And that is the 2.5% that we pay for credit card processing online. So every time someone gives, we are going to pay for those miles and airline tickets and everything else, essentially. And so we're looking to say, as a church, we, as covenant members, we have the ability to take these Blue Fire fees down significantly. So last year, we spent $1,080. This year, at the end of July, $4,871. So it's a little rough. It's a big number, and that can completely be eliminated, or mostly eliminated, if by kind of 2 things. We get rid of the fees, and there's now a box on our donate online that you can say, I'll pay the 2.5% fee if you're paying by a credit card. But if you do a debit card, wire transfer, there's no fees. So if you switch just to a debit card, we believe we can dramatically reduce this. So out of the funds that we have of 164,000 pledged, if we said only 50% of those were able to switch to that, it would save us $2,300 a year. So it would be really something great. That's if we do 50%. We're always going to pay for something of a service, but it's minor ultimately. Mommy's phone? Here, you do this one. You like that one. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yep. So your question is, statement like making somebody aware of the fee that's going to be incurred and make it an automatic absorption to the donation. We have that as an option today. Yeah, it's just an annoying thing for sure. But yes, and so that's what we wanted to do, of at least giving the option. And we'll see if that is something, because it really does amount to a significant amount of money for our budget that we think is not beneficial. But if we can curb our practices a little bit. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so yeah. And we also accept physical checks. There's this bucket, which is that guy does not accept any fees. But it's mostly make you aware, because we saw that jump up 351%, and we would love to avoid that. Within our expenses, though, we did need to account for it. So we have a bucket of money there in case this doesn't change, because we have to allocate for those real fees. And we would love to be able to take 3,000 of that, put it somewhere else very quickly. That is under operations. Correct. We believe that we're going to see a liability and property increase of 33%. So it's $1,600 just for being here. In some of these fees, we are looking at really Bronwyn in this new role to say, can we push back on anything? Can we explore other options? Because they really are becoming burdensome. Actually, let's see if I have everything here. All right, so under facilities here, I should have worked for my digital copies. It's all good. So we are doing something a little bit different. The residents of all of our properties are now responsible for their BG&E. We actually were covering that as a church, and that was for 111, 113, 119. The church pays $7,700 in BG&E utilities. It's one of the things that we want to explore how to remove, but that's what we know it costs. But then 111 and 119, those are $750 in their utilities. We're asking the residents to pay that, to take that out of the church's budget, so that we can avoid some of those facility costs. Um, Internet is a part of that, water and sewage, and then even janitorial supplies. Bronwyn being the janitor for a period of time, we realized that we can save on certain things. Subscribe and save is one of the beneficial ways, and it saves us $200 in that category. Decor in the church is under this. You know what? We're going to hunker down and spend 250 rather than 500. We are still going to get rid of pest control rats, so that's going to stay the same. But those are just the normal practical things, and so that gives us that 19,000. But one of the biggest portions, sorry for that, speaking loudly, is that we are doing something most significant on this. When we had our building funds, what we maintain this building with, we traditionally contribute $12,000 per year to a designated fund to say, when the building needs something, this is where the funds are coming from. So we had $30,000 last year, and we now have $22,000 after we replaced the roof on 111, which was that email of $8,600. We still have $22,000, and the last time that we did the air conditioners, that's where the fund came from, but we were able to get that credit back from the Baltimore Baptist Society to assist in some of that. So we are saying we're going to take it from 12,000 to 5,000. We know there's expenses, but we're going to be pulling from our account rather than putting more money into it just because of where the expenses are. We don't have the money to just put that much away. We know we have 22,000. We believe we can keep it within that, and then next year is another budget. Any questions on the change of that with facilities? That is the largest difference when you're looking at your sheet side to side. And then media and marketing, those are a series of printing materials. We have to buy a SoundCloud membership, website membership, and that's where we were able to save a little bit on what we're printing essentially there. So pastoral ministry, members ministry, hospitality. Pastoral ministry is essentially Brad's budget to take people to lunch, be able to buy coffee for individuals, and so we are cutting that $1,100 to be able to reduce that. It's also a little bit of continuous education, so some of the things that he's able to buy with books or other materials. You buy material for sermon preparation and study. That just gets reduced a little bit. There's still a fund in there, but we just tighten that up there. Then members ministry. When we do events for men specifically or the women's ministry, and I believe the women's ministry is the one that includes the IF gathering, and it's when we buy food or when we're looking to be a little bit more hospitable in those areas, we're taking them down and cutting a little bit. So men's ministry is going from almost $1,500 a year to $750. The same with women's ministry, $750. Discipleship leader training. These are normally when you bring people in, we're trying to provide food or something that it's a little more hospitable. We have to take that to $250. And then that member care is, that one gets broken down a little bit more specific because that's not like benevolence, is it?
Respond. So this space is for you to respond to individually, and you can do that in a few ways. Maybe you want to journal, maybe you want to pray, maybe you want to go back and read the scripture again. Whatever it is
I know that
you need to
counseling
do
was something in
individually,
the
we give
past,
you
and
space
so
to do
we
that.
always
Then
dedicated
we'll respond
$2,400.
I'll come
We're
back
at
and explain to you how we
$1,000
do
for
that in
fund
just a
right
moment.
now.
But for just a
So that's where we're able to save in that category of members care. Clarifications on that, and before we move to hospitality? So hospitality is going to include coffee, food, post-service reception. We've dropped food, and now we're just doing coffee. I'm a fan of it. Kids aren't getting into it, but that's very biased of me. But I do like when events happen and people bring the food after. It's like a nice treat. But it's $1,000 for our church to be able to do that, which is great. But it's just a nice way that we can say, let's scale back. First-time guests, we still are buying the books and the gifts for that at the same budget level. Assimilation and hospitality events, we're taking that in half from $1,300 our 3,000, well, a little bit less, to 1,250. I'm sorry, the If gathering is a part of that. It's $500 for there. And then communion supplies, we're taking it from buying the pre-package, which is $750 a year. We're moving to a new style of that soon, and that's $400. So just looking for these cost savings there. So that is what wraps up the hospitality side of things. And that is just a tremendous amount of money in our budget. All right, youth and kids. So materials in the church, we have a lot of them, so sometimes we don't have to buy a lot more, but we're still buying all of the necessities to keep our ministries going. So we went from $2,300 to $1,600. The kids' childcare, we still have that to be able to pay for people when they help us out. So we're at $1,250 for that. And then youth ministry and youth ministry essentials. So this is not Awana, because Awana has its own line item in missions. This is specifically the middle school and high school ministry that we've included. So we've taken that down from $1,500 to $1,000. And that's when we do picnics, or we do putt-putt, or we go rock climbing. That's where those funds come from. And now we'll just be a little bit different when we do it. But we're able to save, a significant amount side to side there. And then worship, this is Spotify, Planning Center, the equipment we need, pulpit supplies, pro presenter, all of those subscriptions essentially remain the same, but actually increased a little bit because inflation? I don't know why. And then we have missions. So in our budget every year, 10% of what the Lord has given us to be stewards of, we are also giving. The GEM ministry is the one that's going to change this year. And so Sarah is really, and Kathleen are really aware of that. So that ministry will be changing this year. I don't think we actually kept it in our line items, but it's on this slide. We removed the budget for that one of buying meals for those kids. The pastor of that organization has moved away from his church, and there is no place for us to take this ministry and continue to support it, kind of sadly and abruptly. So we're trying to figure out as a church how to do that better. But that is one of the big ones.
So when the news of the pastor of that church leaving kind of became public, the church no longer exists. So the church was formerly known as Captivate, and then it changed its name to Paradise. And it appears that the pastor did that so he could relocate it to Tampa, Florida, and Paradise Church would be more fitting in Florida, with like a palm tree logo. And so it's been really hard within like the Baptist friendship here, because the people in that church were basically told you can stream us from Florida or you can just go find a different church. And that's really sad. So the leader, the missionary who leads Jim, is a member of that church. So she called me and just asked if I would help her process that experience. And so I began to do that, and I brought Sarah in immediately. Sarah's known some of these things before any of us. But what we did in July was we took the money that we would donate, like the remaining money, and we gave it to that missionary for like a personal retreat. She has battled with health issues. She's trying to determine what's next in her life and her ministry. And so we want to help her get to a place that's good for her and her health. But ultimately, we will be ending that partnership with that ministry. And that's something that Sarah knew before this. So this is not like news to Sarah. She's been helping lead and process that. And so it's on that list, but it's zeroed out. So what we do is we just take 10% of what is pledged or estimated. We take 10% out first and allocate it to these ministries that are outside of our church. And that's kind of how we have done that as a church. then everything else we function on is within the 90%. So any questions before Luke retires?
Terry?
That's just like general ministry in the city. So we did some stuff at the police department. We've done some cookouts at Solo Gibbs Park. That's really just like anything. If the school comes to us and says, hey, would you do a teacher appreciation? That's just like in the city missions. Emily? Okay. So as Luke said, this is presented to you for 30 days. So the next movement on this would be a vote by ballot on the end of September. I think it's 25 for us to implement it on October 1 for the new fiscal year. If you have any questions, anything that concerns you, you can email JR directly, you can email Luke directly, you can email all three of us directly or together, however, anything like that. But this is the 30-day kind of put it in front of you, and then we can discuss after that. So Luke, well done, my friend. Thank you, sir.
First time.
I want one of those little things. Next up, we're going to have Macklin. Macklin's going to come talk about the upcoming changes to children's ministry and promoting kids to different rooms and changing different rooms and how people who love her will come serve on Saturday and all of these other things. So, Macklin, the floor is yours. And then Kathleen, you're next. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so starting next weekend, Labor Day weekend, and then also the following weekend, our Sunday school classes will be changing. So just because of the number of kids we have, kids get older, they go out, more kids move up, we just had to redo all the classes. Because we had like about 15 kids under the age of 4 and 15 kids kindergarten to 4th grade. So we just made some changes, classroom locations, along with who's going in what classes. So for our baby and toddler classes will be together. They'll be 6 weeks to 2 years old. We're going to move them to that front classroom right next to the fellowship hall. It's a bigger area. It's all one level. So we're going to be redoing that, covering that classroom, just make sure it's a safe place for our babies. And also we're going to include a nursing mom area in the back because we have a bunch of new moms who are nursing. So we're going to create like a nice little nursing mom area for new moms to nurse in. And then our next class will be the preschool class. That'll be our 3 and 4 year olds. They're going to move to that carpeted classroom that our babies were previously in. They'll have a lesson and all that. And then our lower elementary class is going to just be kindergarten and 1st grade this year. And they'll be meeting in this upstairs classroom right back here. And then upper elementary will be 2nd to 4th grade. They'll be in that small classroom to the left of the kitchen where the toddlers were previously. We are in need of 2 more monthly volunteers. So our monthly volunteers, they serve 2 months of the year. They're our elementary lead teachers. We are still in need of 2 more, maybe 3. Josh would like to step down as a monthly volunteer so he can help support me more as a substitute role and filling in for last minute stuff to help stress levels with me. So he would like to be able to serve me that way, but in order for that, we would need someone to take his place. And then with Becca leaving, that leaves an extra person too. So we need at least 2 to 3 more monthly volunteers. I'm okay staying a monthly volunteer, but if we get a 3rd one, I can step down too to serve in other ways. Please, if you know any members of the church who might be gifted in that area, ask me so I can personally ask them, or you can personally ask them to volunteer. That would be awesome. We also need help organizing Sunday school classes since everything's getting shifted around. Furniture needs to go in new classrooms. We're planning on coming on Saturday, September 3rd, to organize the classrooms. If you're available and can help, that would be awesome. September 3rd, so Saturday of Labor Day weekend. We at least need to get the younger kids classes set up that week because we will have younger kids classes on Labor Day weekend. Yes. And then if you're not able to do that weekend, we might do a second date of September 10th to make sure our elementary classes are up and running too. And that's on Saturday. If you're able to help rearrange, just let me know. We also are in need of a changing table. If anyone has one lying around that you would like to donate to the church, a glider or a diaper pail, because we would like to have a changing table, diaper pail, an extra glider in our babies' classrooms who help with that. Just let me know. For next Sunday, we will have no classes for elementary kids. That was already scheduled and planned. Following that, after Labor Day weekend, we'll start having combined classes on holiday weekends. Our monthly team leaders will serve on those days, and the classes will split off into small groups so they're able to review their lesson in age-appropriate ways. But that also gives us a chance to help with any new guests coming in who might come here for like Easter or Christmas, like those bigger holidays. The kids will still be able to be in class and learning about Jesus where they might not come the following week. So that was the reason for that change. So those will be all holiday weekends after Labor Day. We're going to start doing that. And then we'll do Kids Sundays on the 5th Sunday. Anytime a month has 5 Sundays, on the 5th Sunday will be our Kids Sunday. So if you're interested in helping leading and organizing that, let me know. But yeah, that's pretty much it with Sunday school stuff. I also want to talk a quick bit about Awana. So we're trying to get Awana started back up also. Awana is just our kids' discipleship program that we have. You know, the kids come on Friday nights, learn about Jesus through games, memory verses, Bible lessons. It's not just for members' kids. It's for the kids in our neighborhood. We actually get a lot of kids from our neighborhoods coming in on Friday nights. So it's a way for us to share the gospel with them and then also with their families as well. In order for Awana to run effectively, we would need at least 8 to 10 volunteers per night. That helps us be the most effective. And the reason why I added 10 is we would like to have a cubbies class for our 3 and 4-year-olds, but if we can't get that many volunteers, then we'll just have to keep it at elementary range. But we would like to be able to include the younger ones in as cubbies kids. Josh and I also need assistance with Judah during that time. We're both really heavily involved in Awana. He leads the Sparks. I do the admin and help out with Sparks as well. So if you're able to help with childcare with Judah, let us know. We're flexible. He's fine coming here and playing around, running around like he is now. You want to come to our house, we're fine with that too. We're pretty open. We just need help on Friday nights. That's from 6:30 to 8 o'clock on Fridays. You can serve monthly. You can serve twice a month. You can serve weekly. Just if you can help out, just let me or Catherine Sue is also helping out with the volunteers, organizing them. Just let us know. Thank you.
All right, as Luke alluded to, some things are changing with communion soon. So not next weekend, because I didn't want to make all the changes in one weekend with kids and hospitality. But the weekend after, the Sunday, September 11th, we are going to resume the distribution of communion with cups with grape juice and then sliced bread. The greeter and the coffee crew person will stand at the front with gloves, distribute the elements to members and guests. In the past, we had it, and we'll do this again unless somebody has another idea. But we would go up the aisle, this aisle on the end, come across the stage and go back to collect the elements during the last 2 songs of worship. Just go through my list. We will have the option for prepackaged as well. As Luke said, they are very expensive. So the amount purchased, we'll just see how many get utilized. We don't want to not have that option because we want communion to be available for everybody. Any questions? Yes. are the wafers gluten-free? I don't know if the wafers, I don't know what makes the wafers. If someone's not comfortable receiving the elements that's not prepackaged. And we don't know, because that was the hesitation in the past of resuming that. I don't know what that will look like. How many people will even do that? If no one takes it, then we'll just cut it completely. But we also, in order to get us to the date of September 11, had to buy another packet of 250 or something like that. So we have it. And in that transition, also want to be aware of people's hesitancies and cautions and stuff. So that being said, the person greeting will prep communion. The bread will come already sliced. You would just need to fill grape juice into the cups, and then greeter and coffee crew will be distributing. So just be on the lookout for emailed information about that. I try to make sure that any updates and changes are in the instructions weekly that get sent out if you're serving. I know it's long, I know it's detailed, but it includes all the information you need to know, so please read through it. Many of you do a wonderful, wonderful job of doing that. So I will send a mass email of all the changes just overall, and then the weekly emails will have the same link for you for your position, and the changes will be accordingly. Any questions about that? Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just as a way of encouragement, a few months ago, I think, a member reached out and just said during the pandemic, they learned to bake bread. And that member is providing our communion bread, like freshly baked every week. And that's an act of worship for that individual. And so if you ever feel like you want to serve in a way that is not happening right now, just reach out. Just suggest it. More than likely, it would be a blessing. And so what we're going to do now, we have probably about 15 more minutes, just so you have an idea of what to expect. We're going to go through some membership removals. We're going to have one new member candidate, and then one family in the church wants to share an update, and that's it. So we'll go through that. So the first family that we're going to go through the process of removing is Kevin and Amelia Lee. Kevin and Amelia have moved to Manhattan, and they have found their way to Redeemer West Side. And so when Tim Keller was the pastor of Redeemer Presbyterian, they had multi-site campuses. When he stepped down in retirement, they made all of those campuses autonomous churches. So this is one of the churches in the Redeemer Presbyterian family or network of churches. And so if you're in Manhattan, it's really probably hard to find a better church than this. And so I've emailed with them, and they are there. They're pursuing their commitment there, so we can take the action of moving them off of our membership for right now. And so any questions about that? We do need to do this as an act of a vote, so we'll do this just individually. Everybody in favor of removing Amelia Lee from our membership, say yes. Yes. Anybody opposed, say no. Everybody in favor of removing Kevin Lee from our membership, say yes. Yes. Anybody opposed, say no. The second one is Alex and Mason Osepchuk. They have moved down to North Carolina. And Mason has lovingly told me they've found their way to a church that does not yet have a name. And so it's like 20 people that are planting a church out of a church called Mercy Church, which is a plant from the Summit Church, would be like our cousin church or something like that. But Alex and Mason are really excited about being in a smaller church setting again, to be able to serve. And so I said, Mason, like, it's really hard to let you go if the church doesn't have a name. So he said, just call it Mercy Church Plant. And so we will move to let them go. Any questions about that? All right, everybody in favor of removing Alex Osepchuk from our membership, say yes. Yes. Anybody opposed, say no. And everybody in an affirmation of removing Mason Osepchuk from our membership, say yes. Yes. Anybody opposed, say no. The next one is Ashton and Thomas Ross. The Air Force repositioned them in the D.C., Northern Virginia area. And so they are living on a base. I can't remember what base it is, but they're living on a base. And they have found their way to my friend's church. His name's Garrett Kale, and that church is Delray Baptist Church in Northern Virginia. And so they're pursuing membership with their elders, and we need to move them off of our membership. Any questions about that? So everybody in favor of removing Ashton from membership, Ashton Ross, say yes. Anybody opposed, say no. Everybody affirming removing Thomas Ross from membership, say yes. Anyone opposed, say no. The last one's going to need more of your time and attention, and that's just because I need to share some stuff with you guys. And that one is for Angie Say. And so I just want to share a little bit about that with you guys. If you guys were here in November, you know that we brought that to your attention. But the body of the church said no at that time. Let's wait and give more time. But there has been some changes, and I just want to share that with you guys. And I want to do it by reading something that Jenna Marie and I have written. Sometimes I think when people read things, it's taken as like cold or indifferent, and I don't want you to feel that way. I actually take it as the only way to be accurate, because I'm not just going off the cuff. And so I just want to share that with you guys. On August 12th, I received an email from Angie Say that Jenna Marie was copied on. The email was Angie's request to be removed from membership at JOR. She specifically requested to not get any more emails or texts, which I've honored by removing her from the membership tag on Breeze already. That's how we communicate through stuff. Because of the nature of the request, the reason and motivation and the relationship that Jenna Marie and I had with Angie in the past, I think it'd be helpful for me to share a little bit. The reason Angie requests to be removed, as a quote from her email, is due to the lack of effort toward reconciliation with church leaders. Again, if you were here in October, November, you may have recalled that came up, and then we postponed so she would have more time to find a church. And so this one I feel like is the email we got 16 days ago is a little bit different than what we did in the fall. Several years ago, in the spring of 2018, Jenna Marie and I have we walked with Angie through some things. She was a PICU nurse at that time. She had 4 patients die. She was also in the process of having a cancer diagnosis. And we thought it would be helpful for her to consider living with us for a while, and she accepted that invitation. And for the period of time she was with us, from the spring to the winter, was mutually beneficial for everyone. This was not the first time we've opened our house for someone to live with us. It was just something we did in a season of need. In the late 2018, Jenna Marie approached me to share a conviction that she had felt, and shared that she believed that season had come to an end. Her conviction was that it would be wise for the season to come to an end, and I was in full agreement with her. In a conversation with Angie, Jenna Marie shared this conviction and asked that she make her home, the home that she owned, her home base. This was very painful for Angie. The pain and hurt she felt led to a very real strain on the relationship that weighed heavily on both Angie and Jenna Marie. Although Jenna Marie sought to pursue her and serve her actively, Angie's heart wasn't receptive. Hear me very clearly on this. This is nothing unique to Angie. This is how we all feel after we've experienced hurt by someone close to us. If someone close to us hurts us in some way, it takes time. It takes time. As the time passed, we felt things were changing for the better. For instance, after Lem's heart catheter procedure, not the open heart procedure, the catheter procedure in December 2019, Angie particularly requested in the PACU to be his provider. This was a blessing, because it's a very traumatic experience for us, and to have her care for him was a sweet blessing. He had complications in the surgery, and his blood pressure dropped. And just to know that she was the one holding him first was very comforting to us. Then in the summer of 2020, as Angie was preparing to relocate to Nashville, Johnson engaged all of us in a meeting for mediation and reconciliation. With Angie preparing to move, the goal was to ensure that things were settled and resolved. Johnson served us all well, as those of you who knew him would know and expect him to do. That meeting was helpful. We were able to share our experience, as well as share about things we could have done differently to seek forgiveness and reconciliation. Following that meeting, we met with Angie again without Johnson, just the 3 of us, and then she spent some time with our kids later that morning. All of this was before moving. When she moved back in the summer of 2021, we again met with her. Johnson from California had informed me that she would likely not be engaging in ministry at JOR. So we wanted to meet and assure her that our friendship was not contingent on her being a member at JOR. There were a few churches in the city that I recommended to her at that time. This past semester, winter and spring, Angie reached out and requested to meet again with another mediator. However, this came in a season where we just could not pursue or fulfill that request. As many of you know, this past semester has been extraordinarily difficult for us. The stress and trauma of Jenna Marie has endured with her ongoing family of origin issues has now brought about physiological issues that we're still trying to get under control. Jenna Marie didn't have the ability to pursue this, and I agreed that it was just simply needed to wait longer. So the lack of effort, in our opinion, really focuses on this past semester, when Jenna Marie's bandwidth was simply only able to focus on our family unit and her D group, which at times was even impacted by her health. No one ever wants to be the reason someone leaves a church, especially the pastor and his wife. Our hearts are heavy for the pain that Angie has experienced over the last couple of years. Our only intent was to serve her and help her in a season of need, and in God's kindness, we found her to be an exceptional help to us as well. Many of you have remained close contact with her. Some of the ladies of the church have been very intentional in seeking to help her and care for her, and this is a wonderful demonstration of the body's care and compassion. Due to the nature of the situation and our role in the church, we have sought to refrain from speaking about it to anyone, publicly, privately, except for a very limited number of women that Jenna Marie has confided in. We're fully open and forthcoming with Johnson and felt in that season the relationship had been restored. We have also sought counsel for others outside of the church, as well as with Jenna Marie's counselor. My hope in sharing this is that it helps to fill in some gaps and share a little bit from our side of the experience. I realize that there may be further questions, but I feel like they may be best asked in a one-on-one setting. However, if you feel that you have a question that I can answer, please let me know. If not, I feel that we should honor her request, although there's no church we are passing her to in this transition. I feel that to not honor her request would just cause more trauma for her, which is not our desire. So any questions that you guys feel like you can ask that might be able to be answered in the forum? Okay, seeing none, my suggestion is that we honor her request. The decision rests with the body, not with the elder or the pastor. Okay? So we'll do as we've done with others. If you affirm removing Angie Say from our membership roster, would you say yes? If you oppose removing Angie Say from our membership roster, would you say no? There's one new member candidate that we have to present. His name is Andrew Lee. Andrew is a second-year medical student at University of Maryland. Andrew is from San Diego. He went to university at Dartmouth. After he graduated from Dartmouth, he went to an internship at the National Institute of Health in Rockville, and he came to us from Rockville. Previously in Rockville, he was in a Chinese Baptist church. And now he has found us based on where he lives in some different web searches and friends and things like that. I believe that he and Vivian may be in the same class year, second year medical students. And so I've met with Andrew. Andrew came to faith and really solidified his faith as a senior in high school. Going from San Diego to Dartmouth was a huge change, and he was able to live out his faith as an undergrad student there. And so I've met with him, heard his testimony. He affirms all of our statement of faith. He has been baptized in his church in San Diego. And so I present him to you. After meeting him, I connected him to Caleb and to Will Yang, who are both docs at the University of Maryland. Emily and Stephen, he would probably be a great fit for y'all's community group based on where he lives right next to campus. And so what you would be encouraged to do is, especially for you guys, just reach out to him. I can provide his information. Bronwyn, if you remind me in your email, we can provide his email and his phone number so that guys can reach out to him and things like that. And so really sweet young man who I look forward to having with us. What we would do then for his consideration of membership is after a month, when you have an opportunity to vote and affirm on the budget, his name would also be on that. So we have a month to pray for him, to pursue him. If you have not yet met him, I'd love to introduce you. If you're a medical professional or any guy in the church, I would highly encourage you to reach out to him and befriend him. He is a young single guy. Invite him over to your house for food. Make sure he's doing laundry. Like those types of things would be probably loving and helpful to him. The last thing that we have on the docket for today is that Andrew and Megan Kaufman would like to come and just share a word of update with us as a church. And then we'll pray together and we'll be dismissed.
We'll keep it brief. We understand that everyone's ready to roll. We're not moving anywhere, just so we're clear. I feel like a lot of these meetings go that way, so don't worry. We're not going anywhere. Our main purpose of this is we've just been going through a lot the past few years. It's hard to let people in on that when we have get-togethers, when we meet up with people at church. It's just hard to really unravel a lot of what's been going on. So we just wanted to spend this time just to briefly just let you guys in on it. The main reason, just this is our family here in Baltimore, so we just want you guys to be a part of that journey with us, what we've been experiencing, and just pray for us. That's the big thing. So Megan's going to wrap us up once we just get through this, just some prayer requests. So brief introduction. So Andrew, Megan, Kaufman. Sometimes I feel like sometimes forgetting members. I haven't really met a whole lot, so I just want to make sure that's clear. I think I know everybody. So we met here, Jesus Our Redeemer. That's a story into itself. So I'm going to spare some time there. But we met here at Jesus Our Redeemer. We got married a little over 4 years ago. And Brad officiated our wedding. So Baltimore, Jesus Our Redeemer, it's home. It's we just love it so much. So we got married June 2018. About a year into marriage, we just stopped preventing the likelihood of getting pregnant. So we just took away the precautions of doing that, and then so that's something we were pursuing. So we were pursuing pregnancy. And I'll let Megan kind of take it from there.
So we had anticipated struggles from the beginning, at least for me personally. So ever since I was in my late teens, I have battled with and continue to battle with an eating disorder, one result of which can manifest as infertility. So for me, at least, I anticipated that it would be challenging for me and maybe might not even be a given period. But we continued for a year of praying and hoping, lots of therapy around my eating disorder, and after about a year or so, more than a year and a half, we're no closer really to conceiving naturally. So we did start to talk about some other routes.
So she mentioned we sought the help of a fertility clinic to at least do pre-screening, just to understand what's going on, where are we at. We have our preconceived notions, but we just don't really understand on the biological basis of what's really going on. So we went through medical workups, learned that we both had conditions that would just prevent us from having children biologically. So long story short there. Our doctor informed us that if we wanted to have biological children, really the only option was in vitro fertilization. So you can Google it, but essentially it's, still, get a little scientific, still my sperm, still her eggs, and fertilizing outside of the body. You implant the embryo to get pregnant. So it's not like using a surrogate or anything like that. It's still, it's in a lab. So it brings the excitement and intimacy out of it. But we just really struggled with the ethical nature of IVF. So we're like, all right, it's a whirlwind IVF, just understanding what it is. I think a big struggle for us was just walking alone in just the circumstances we were in, just the complexity of everything. There just really wasn't someone that at least we knew of that were Christians going through the same thing. Not to saying there aren't any, but just as far as we knew. So just creating a human life outside of the womb. For us, we saw embryo as life. So creating an embryo, IVF, a big thing is you create as many embryos as you can, and then you just pick the ones that look the best and the ones that look vital, and essentially you discard the rest that you don't use. So that was a struggle for us, just even working through the clinic and just walking through that process, because that was just very opposite of what they were used to. Let's just say that. So also part of it was genetically screening. That was something they did. They genetically screened. If they saw, concerns with the embryo from a genetic perspective, they would discard it. So that was a struggle for us, kind of going into that realm of, wow, this is just very opposite of, a lot of our beliefs and just how they, generally approach this process. So kind of walking through that, it's like in prayer and understanding, it's like, okay, is, adoption and foster care something we want to get into? That's always been kind of on our hearts, just a lot of the families that have fostered children in our church, just the need there. Just so many children need homes. So we had a home, and we could, provide that for somebody else. So just being burdened by that. So we're just really going through this kind of in tandem, these two paths. So a lot of it was just seeking counsel of others, the leaders in our church, really good friends, just countless hours of looking through online research, Gospel Coalition, Desiring God, so on and so forth. And just a lot of prayer. Man, it was so much prayer. Just to, all right, God, what's the plan for us? What do you want us to do?
Yeah. So after a lot of prayer, like Andrew said, a lot of under trying to understand what is biblically right to do. Is IVF a sin? Is this something we shut the door on forever? Do we completely give up on ever having biological children? And then also, I think Andrew alluded to, foster care and adoption. At what point are we willing to draw the line? And how much money, how much time, how much of our own resources are we willing to invest into artificially creating children from our own DNA when there are literally children in foster care in need of adoption, sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting. We have a home, we have an income, we have the things that can provide. So there are some really things that weigh heavily on our hearts and that we felt really burdened with, and felt just like the ethics behind starting a family were just so heavily weighted in our certain circumstances, and felt like it wasn't quite the same. Felt like, I think you said, there weren't really other Christians walking through just the difficulties that we were in terms of what steps to take next. After a lot of prayer, a lot of wisdom from our wonderful church leaders, Johnson drove to our house in the middle of a pandemic, sat down on our couch, and went through a book with us on bioethics and just his unique perspective with he and Emily having to make difficult decisions around a sick child. We were able to navigate and pray through a way that we could proceed with IVF in a way that we felt, without sin, but also our goal wasn't simply to avoid sin. It was to try to glorify God in whatever we did per se. We didn't feel it was enough to simply try to squeak by without sinning, but to truly obey whatever the Lord was calling us to do individually. So we did end up deciding to proceed with IVF. Our caveats, which we had to repeat again and again at the clinic, were after prayer we decided we only wanted to fertilize 4 eggs. We felt 4. If we had 4 eggs, all 4 of them were successfully fertilized. We had 4 embryos, all 4 of them were successfully implanted, successfully led to pregnancies. That'd be incredible. We have 4 living, healthy children. If things didn't go right, we might end up with no pregnancies ever, but we were not going to simply fertilize 30 or 40 eggs and hope for the best and end up with embryos to discard. We also declined their recommendation to genetically screen our embryos, as we had no plans of discarding many embryos ever, even if they did have Down syndrome or cystic fibrosis or some other illness. So we proceeded with IVF. The first step of that was an egg retrieval. Essentially, long story short, lots of weeks of doing medications and going in for lab work, and ultimately a procedure to remove eggs from my body, and then creating the embryos. By God's providence, the 4 eggs we fertilized, all 4 of them made it to the 5-day stage called the blastocyst stage, where they can be frozen and kept for future transfers, which is unusual and rare. Typically, from what we've been told, maybe 50% of the eggs you fertilize might actually make it to that day 5 stage. So that was a huge answer prayer. That was a miracle. Just really joyful, and all the steps that went into it, and all the time in prayer and procedures and everything. We did have our first embryo transfer April of 2021, and again, miraculously, we got pregnant.
Yeah, then at 6.5 weeks, we had a miscarriage. Get my notes back up. Yeah, you got it.
So we processed through that with incredible family and friends and church members who came alongside us and loved us. And then after, recovering from that, there were, again, decisions what to do next. It wasn't simply, let's start trying. It was, okay, scheduling more procedures and doing more things. So we started to plan for another embryo transfer since we still had 3 babies remaining. At the same time, we also started down the road of becoming certified as foster parents in Baltimore County because we felt this kind of awakened sense of urgency that in these 2 years that we've been dealing with all this, there are, again, kids waiting. Midsummer, though, we realized my weight had dropped. We had paid no attention to my recovery and needed to take a big step back from a lot of the things we were trying to pursue and do and add to our lives and focus on recovery and therapy. So spending the past year or so, we focused a lot on recovery, therapy, stepping back in areas where needed. We did pursue another embryo transfer in late June. The first embryo they thawed with the intent of transferring did not survive, so we did lose another baby on that day of the transfer. They thawed a second embryo, and that baby did survive to the fresh stage, and they were able to transfer it. To check to see if you're pregnant, they measure your HCG level about 2 weeks after the transfer. So Friday, July 2nd, I went in for my HCG level to be checked, and it was borderline to low. From what my nurse told me over the phone, too low to probably be a viable pregnancy at all. And it was, she said, more than likely we had lost yet a third baby. And said she was very sorry, and, this wasn't the news we hoped for. So we spent that long weekend grieving, struggling with all of the ugly emotions, the anger, the bitterness, the things that feel sinful and wrong, and struggling to praise God in our circumstances. The next week I went back just for routine repeat blood work so they could track the level, and it increased exponentially. I was pregnant, and they continued to track the level, and I'm 12 and a half weeks pregnant today. But those emotions, the things that we've been through the past year, the hurt, the difficulties, this incredible gift of God, it hasn't undone those things, and that's where we really need your prayers. So the prayers we'd like to leave with, to ask you guys to please pray for. First is for the Lord to preserve this baby, as well as our last remaining frozen baby, embryo. Second is that any children who enter into our family, whether it's through biology, through foster care, through adoption, that those children will know Jesus. Third is for Andrew needs to be satisfied in Christ in all of our circumstances, and to trust his perfect plan for us and our family. And fourth is to obey the Lord if his desire for our family and our lives and our futures is different than what we think we want. And then the last request is simply, we haven't made this news public aside from immediate family and very close friends, and now the church membership. So at least the next 2 weeks, please don't share this until we have a handle on sharing with others. But thank you for walking alongside us. You guys really have been so wonderful and faithful to us in this last few years, and we love you and thank you for you.
If you ever want to know what a hero of the faith looks like, there it is. Jenna Marie and I have had a front row to them for years, and we've left meetings after meetings astonished with their faithfulness, and their grace, their kindness, and their faith. And so what I want to do, I just want to have you guys sit down right here, and I just want to ask all of us just to get around them and lay hands on them. And I want us to pray for them the way that they've asked us to pray. And then, Ji-Sung, when this recording or whatever, I want it cut out so that there's nothing we can do to put this out in the wrong way. I want us to spend some time praying over them. Colleen, could you do that? Could you pray? If you would. I mean, you don't have to.
Dear Heavenly and good Father, we come together to stand in awe of you and of your goodness and your kindness, your faithfulness, that in all seasons, what we need most is you, and you find ways to give us more and more of you in every season. God, I thank you and praise you for Andrew and for Megan, the fact that they are good gifts to us, to our family, to our church family. God, we just praise you for the work that you have done in their lives, in their hearts before now, and in these dark seasons. God, we just stand and we rejoice with them and praise you for the creation of these 4 little lives, these 4 souls that you know intimately, that you love, the 2 that you have called home, that we will one day meet with great joy. God, we pray for this new little life that is growing inside of Megan, that you would sustain it, that you would bring it to full term, that you would give that little baby to us as a church family, that you would protect Megan in her heart and her mind, that you would strengthen Andrew in his support of his wife in this season. God, would you heal Megan's body in a way that is able to glorify you in all that you've called her to do. God, we just worship you and stand in awe of the work you have done and that you continue to do. Your past faithfulness is a promise of future faithfulness, and we don't know what that looks like, but we rest in it and we trust in it, and we just thank you that you call us yours, and that we get to know you and trust a good Father in the midst of all this. God, we just thank you and love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Guys, this is it. I just want to say, if you've been blessed by them in the last 2.5 years, even yesterday, their hospitality, their generosity, any of that, that's been out of their weakness in the midst of this. And so just count that an extra blessing from God. You guys are dismissed. I'll hang around if you want to talk about anything, but we love you guys. We'll pray for you guys, and nobody's going to